I curiously remember more of recording that book than I do of many others. I was certainly thrilled by it. I think there's a striking image at one point in the book where for me the book turned, which was at some sort of ghastly public execution in Germany or somewhere, where some men are beaten about the knees and extremely, extremely badly hurt. And it's a punishment. And the girl who is in love with Monte Cristo turns to him and sees him standing there with a new look in his eyes, like an avenging angel, she says. And it's the first time in the book when curiously you realize that revenge has consumed him now. He no longer wants what he had before, as it might have been. He wants much more. And he becomes a very mighty, dark figure from then until the end of the book. Always heroic, and yet now seriously flawed. I completely love that as an actor, that ingredient in the man's makeup. That book took me, certainly from the very beginning, first of all, the issues of courage and loyalty, and then the issues of terrible betrayal, and then the issues of retribution. But before that, the issues of correction, and then retribution, and then serious revenge. So there's an arc of human behavior through the book, which absolutely swept me along. There's no question that I was more thrilled by reading that book than I have been by many that I've read. And it's a curious fact that Naxos have told me that it's one of their best sellers in America, and continues to be so. And on Twitter, I routinely get very complimentary tweets from people who've discovered that I'm on Twitter about that book, very often Americans. And so it does seem to be a very great piece of work, that book, that perhaps is underappreciated because I had never, as a boy, I knew of it, but I'd never as a boy thought of the Count of Monte Cristo as being up there with, say, Paradise Lost or Les Miserables or the Dickens, the big Dickens novels. But it really is, it really does belong there. I think it's a piece of magnificence.
I completely agree. I think maybe to just hypothesize and explain partly why it's so popular, maybe with Americans specifically, I don't know, but Dantes at the beginning is the most relatable everyman character ever because he has, he's not born with anything, and everything he does have up to a certain very low ceiling is achieved off the back of his own merit of being a good sailor, of being a good friend, a good comrade, or being a good, being well servile to his boss and also loyal. And then he's thrown away unjustly. And then I think this is where, for me at least, it's the potential of education and how far that can take you. Now, it's the most hyperbolic distance ever because feasibly no man could become such a master of the universe as Monte Cristo does. But that there's not, at least for me, and I'm not a very well-read person, right? But just from characters in literature and movies that I've seen throughout my life, there hasn't been someone as relatable as that because they don't have any special endowment on them. It is just the full potential of what a man could be. And then obviously he goes on to just do a bunch of extremely devious, but also entertaining things because you as the viewer get to see behind the scenes and how he's manipulating everyone to work against themselves. And that's probably why. And he's also, just perfectly the master of the universe. In every room he walks into, he's the most mysterious person, the most interesting person, the smartest person, and the most dangerous person, all simultaneously. And everywhere he goes, he is, he's revered almost. And that's, maybe just me projecting a little bit too much, but I think there's a part of that in everyone to sort of aspire to. That's why we respect these sort of people so much. But yeah, the scene you were talking about, I think was in Rome.
Rome. You're
Shortly
right. It wasn't
after.
Germany. It was in Rome.
Yeah,
Yes.
shortly after. And yeah, you're right. That actually scene also, the avenging angel, also stood out to me a lot as well. And I imagine is a very memorable line and scene from the book, because
Yes.
Monte Cristo forces these guys to come with him when they are very hesitant about going to see a public execution, and Monte Cristo is basically again and again confirming why this is in fact a good thing. And you realize at the avenging angel, he just loved it for the sport. There was no
No.
philosophy that he was trying to expound on it. But are you familiar with Alexandre Dumas' father, Thomas Alexandre Dumas?
Yes, the senior. Not really familiar with, but I know of him, of course. Yes.
There is, perhaps you could explain from as much as you know, who he was, but then also how he was a key inspiration to the character Dantes. And this is Alexandre Dumas' father.
Yes. When I recorded the book, I would have done my background research, and I would have been able to answer properly at that time. And it's so many years ago. I don't know what year that was recorded, but in the 90s, I think.
Oh, really?
Perhaps no. No, I think I recorded it here in my other booth. So, yeah, anyway, maybe 20 years ago, maybe 18 years ago, long time ago. And so I don't remember. I used to write the study notes for all of my records for Naxos, and they don't now produce those. And so I don't do that anymore. But at the time, I would have been more intelligent about it, and I can't really be. I know that he was a figure and an influence on Dumas' writing, and particularly, as you say, in this book, as a character modeled on him. But I can't be very intelligent about that, I'm afraid. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Allow me to just add a bit of flavor, and maybe it'll jog your memory. So, Alexandre Dumas famously black in the early 1800s in France. And this is shortly after they abolished slavery in Haiti. And Alexander's father was a guy called Thomas Alexandre Dumas, who was born a slave in Haiti, had some horrible white father who took on a black slave woman and had this child, Thomas Alexandre Dumas. Eventually grew up, Thomas Alexandre Dumas' father grew up as obviously an outsider, but not as a slave, because his father was this, white rich man. And his father fell into financial troubles and sold his son back into slavery before he returned to Paris.
Yes,
and so
right.
then Thomas Alexandre Dumas is this man who sort of had a good aristocratic education, a military education, but he's now a slave amongst the rest in Haiti. France ends up abolishing slavery in Haiti, and he comes to Paris, and he immediately cuts himself out as this remarkable figure, because he's physically very imposing. He's tall, handsome, strong. And yeah, he becomes one of the, this is skipping a lot of steps, but he becomes one of the leading generals in Napoleon's army. And there are these anecdotes of him just performing the most unbelievable feats of strength and courage and bravery, which I don't remember exactly the details, but I'll put a link in the description of a very good biography of this guy to hear it. But unbelievable feats of courage and bravery, and you would also just say stupidity. Things like taking 4 men and trying to mow down 100 men and succeeding. This kind of wild stuff. And anyway, Thomas Alexandre Dumas was such a popular figure amongst the group, but he also wasn't born with any sort of birthrights. Right? You get Edmond Dantes comparisons a lot here as well. And then Napoleon feels threatened by him, because Napoleon, for whatever reason, he, as much as he admired Alexander Dumas earlier on, he started to see him maybe as a threat. And so he banished him to an Italian prison where Alexander Dumas essentially lost all of his faculties and ended up being released 10, 20 years later, to die in France. But up until the point where Dantes is put into Chateau d'If, there is too many comparisons for Alexander Dumas' father to ignore. And then you kind of get the sense that he then, Alexander Dumas, wrote the ultimate future for which he wished his father could have had. And obviously his father was someone he admired very much. He never knew him. He died very young, but he grew up on the stories of his legendary father, the black general in Napoleon's army. And when I learned that, it added so much more flavor to the story as well.
Yes, at the time, all of that information would have colored my approach to the book. But I have an appalling mind which ditches, just as one ditches scripts afterwards, an appalling mind that ditches information. I think it's to the despair of Estelle, who remembers everything.